Marcus Sullivan had terrorized 3 teachers into quitting Jefferson High in just 18 months, but when he locked the new chemistry teacher in a storage locker, her Apple Watch triggered a district-wide SWAT response that would end his reign in exactly 47 minutes. What started as another cruel prank against a young female teacher spiraled into a federal incident that exposed years of administrative cover-ups and changed how American schools handle violence forever. By the end of this story, you'll discover how one woman's refusal to be another statistic transformed an entire community's approach to protecting educators. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation, if stories about standing up to injustice inspire you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support through the thanks button below each video helps us create more powerful narratives that reach those who need to hear them most. Every contribution, no matter how small, fuels our mission to share stories that matter. Thank you for being part of our community. Now, let's uncover how Catherine Foster became the teacher who refused to break. Jefferson High School sat like a fortress of faded brick and broken promises on the outskirts of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, the kind of place where football trophies from the 1980s still gleamed in dusty cases while science labs made do with textbooks older than some of the teachers. It was here, on a humid Tuesday morning in early September, that Catherine Foster Kate, to anyone who bothered to learn her name, pulled into the cracked parking lot in her 10-year-old Honda Civic, her hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. At 26, Kate was everything the previous chemistry teachers hadn't been: young, optimistic, and stubbornly determined to make a difference. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a professional bun. Her pressed blue blazer, a stark contrast to the tired resignation that seemed to hang over the building like morning fog. She'd driven 14 hours from Boston, leaving behind a comfortable position at a prestigious prep school for this a chance to teach kids who really needed someone to believe in them. What Kate didn't know, as she gathered her carefully prepared lesson plans and brand new periodic table posters, was that Marcus Sullivan was already watching from the second-floor window. At 18, Marcus stood 6'3" with the build of someone who'd been held back twice and spent those extra years in the weight room. His father owned half the commercial real estate in town, including the strip mall where most of the school board members ran their businesses. This combination of physical intimidation and financial immunity had made Marcus untouchably a fact he'd proven with the last 3 chemistry teachers. Fresh meat, Marcus muttered to his crew, a rotating cast of followers who mistook fear for respect. Tyler Brennan and Jake Morrison flanked him, both varsity football players who'd learned that aligning with Marcus meant avoiding becoming his target. They watched as Kate struggled with a box of lab equipment, her optimism practically radiating in the morning sun. The first warning should have been the silence when Kate entered the teacher's lounge. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Ellen Hartley, who'd taught English for 30 years, gave her a look that was equal parts pity and warning. "You're the new chemistry teacher?" Ellen's voice carried the weight of unspoken history. "Yes, I'm Kate Foster. So excited to be here." Kate's enthusiasm felt suddenly out of place, like wearing a ball gown to a funeral. Ellen exchanged glances with Robert Chen, the physics teacher who'd survived 5 years by making himself invisible. "Third one this year," Robert said quietly, then louder. "Welcome to Jefferson. If you need anything," he trailed off, the offer hollow as an echo. Kate's classroom was tucked in the back corner of the science wing, a location that would prove significant. The previous teacher had left in such a hurry that half-graded papers still littered the desk, red ink bleeding across questions about molecular structures. Kate spent the morning setting up, transforming the neglected space with colorful posters about famous women in science and motivational quotes about persistence. Her first 3 classes went surprisingly well. The students seemed curious about the young teacher who actually seemed to care, who knew their names by the end of roll call and asked about their interests. But 4th period was different. 4th period was when Marcus Sullivan walked in. He didn't walk proud, each step calculated to claim space. The rest of the class filed in behind him like a funeral procession, taking seats as far from the front as possible. Kate felt the shift in energy, but maintained her smile. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Miss Foster, and I'm thrilled to be exploring chemistry with you this year." Marcus slouched in his desk, legs sprawled into the aisle. "Miss Foster." He drew out her name like he was tasting something sour. "That's a pretty young name. How old are you? Like 12? Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Kate's smile didn't waver, but her grip on the textbook tightened. "Old enough to have a master's degree in chemical engineering from MIT? Now, let's talk about the syllabus." "Mitt?" Marcus interrupted, his voice dripping false interest. "Must be smart. Smart enough to know what happened to the last chemistry teacher?" The room fell silent. 22 students suddenly found their desks fascinating. Kate met Marcus's gaze steadily. "I'm here to teach chemistry, not discuss personnel matters. If you have concerns about your education, I'm happy to discuss them after class." It was the wrong answer, or maybe the right one. Either way, Kate had just painted a target on her back. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare. It started small crude drawings left on her desk. Chemicals mysteriously misplaced. Equipment damaged just enough to disrupt lessons, but not enough to prove sabotage. Kate documented everything in a careful journal, reported each incident to Principal Warner, and received the same response: "Boys will be boys. Especially the Sullivan boy. Best to just adapt." But Kate had never been good at adapting to injustice. She'd grown up in South Boston, raised by a single mother who cleaned offices at night and taught her daughter that backing down from bullies only made them hungrier. So when Marcus accidentally knocked over a beaker of dilute acid during a demonstration, Kate didn't flinch. "Clean it up," she said calmly, handing him paper towels, "and you'll be staying after class to review proper lab safety." The class held its breath. No one gave Marcus Sullivan detention. No one made him clean anything. Marcus's face flushed red. But Kate had already turned back to the board, continuing her lesson on molecular bonds as if nothing had happened. After class, Marcus didn't stay, but Tyler Brennan lingered, shifting nervously. "Miss Foster, you should be careful. Marcus doesn't like being embarrassed." Kate looked at the boy, seeing fear masked as loyalty. "Thank you for your concern, Tyler, but I'm here to teach, and every student deserves to learn in a safe environment, including you, Chula Flu." But not before Kate caught something in his eyes, a flicker of hope quickly extinguished by reality. The escalation was swift. Kate's car tires were slashed in the parking lot. "Random vandalism," Principal Warner assured her. Despite the security cameras that mysteriously malfunctioned that day, her classroom windows were painted with obscenities over the weekend. "Probably town kids," the janitor muttered, even though the paint matched the cans in the art room. But Kate persisted. She arrived earlier, stayed later, and refused to let her smile falter in front of the students. She started a after-school tutoring program that actually drew attendees' kids hungry for someone who saw potential instead of problems. Even some of Marcus's peripheral crew began showing up, drawn by the novel experience of a teacher who remembered their names and cared about their futures. This was Marcus's mistake, letting Kate build connections, because when Tuesday, September 23rd arrived, she wasn't quite as alone as he'd planned. The day started wrong. Kate's usual parking spot was blocked by Marcus's lifted truck, forcing her to park in the far lot. The walk to the building felt longer, shadows stretching despite the morning sun. Her classroom door was ajar. She always locked eye-tanned inside. Shows. Every poster torn down, equipment scattered, and written across the whiteboard in permanent marker, "Last chance, bitch." Kate stood in the doorway, surveying the destruction. Ellen Hartley appeared beside her, coffee mug trembling slightly. "Honey, nobody would blame you for leaving. The Brennan boy already told me Marcus is planning something for today. Something big. Then I guess I better be ready," Kate replied, pulling out her phone to photograph everything. "Could you watch my class for 5 minutes? I need to report this to Principal Warner. Ellen grabbed her arm. Kate? You don't understand. The last teacher who pushed back, she didn't just quit. She was hospitalized. Anxiety attack. They said. But the bruises on her arms said different. And nobody saw anything. Nobody ever sees anything when it comes to Marcus Sullivan. Kate gently removed Ellen's hand. Then maybe it's time someone started looking. Principal Warner's office was a shrine to mediocrity. Participation trophies and photos with local politicians covering what might have once been ambition. He listened to Kate's report with the expression of a man calculating lawsuit probabilities. Miss Foster, I understand you're upset, but without concrete proof. I have photos. I have documentation. I have witnesses who've told me Marcus is planning something. Kate's voice remained steady. Professional. Warner's face shifted. A patronizing smile, sliding into place. Catherine, may I call you Catherine? You're young, idealistic. That's admirable. But Marcus Sullivan is a complicated young man from a prominent family. These incidents could be anyone. Perhaps you're reading too much into typical teenage behavior because of your own inexperience. The dismissal was clear. Kate stood, smoothing her blazer. I see. Well, I have a class to teach. I trust you'll at least have maintenance clean the vandalism? Of course. Of course. Warner was already turning to his computer. Dismissing her, Kate returned to find Ellen had managed to settle her first period students. She taught through the morning, ignoring the whispers. The anxious glances, the way students jumped at sudden noises. The destroyed classroom became a lesson in resiliences. She taught from memory, used the vandalism as a discussion point about chemical reactions to stress, and refused to let Marcus's terrorism win. But fourth period loomed like a storm system on radar, inevitable and destructive. When the bell rang, students filed in with unusual quiet. Marcus's desk remained empty. 5 minutes passed. 10. Kate began to hope. Began her lesson on molecular stability. When the door slammed open, Marcus stood there, but different. His usual swagger was replaced by something darker, more desperate. Behind him, Tyler and Jake looked genuinely frightened. Everybody out? Marcus commanded. Class is canceled. Students began to rise, conditioned to obey. Kate's voice cut through. Nobody moves. This is my classroom. Mr. Sullivan, you're tardy. Take your seat or report to the principal's office. The challenge hung in the air like vapor before an explosion. Marcus stepped forward, and suddenly Kate understood. He wasn't just angry, he was cornered. Something had shifted in the power dynamic. Maybe her refusal to break. Maybe the students beginning to respect her. Maybe just the inevitable collapse of a bully running out of victims. I said, "Get out," Marcus roared. This time, students scrambled for the door. Only Tyler hesitated, catching Kate's eye with something like apology before Jake dragged him away. And then they were alone. You think you're so smart. Marcus advanced slowly, methodically. Kate backed toward her desk, hand reaching for her phone. Coming here, disrespecting me, turning people against me. You're just like the others, except you're too stupid to know when to quit. Marcus, this is a mistake. Whatever you're planning, shut up. His fist connected with the wall inches from her head. Kate felt plaster dust settle on her shoulder. You want to see what happened to the last bitch who tried to give me detention? The next moments blurred. Marcus lunged. Not to hit, but to grab. Kate tried to dodge, but the destroyed classroom left little room to maneuver. His hands closed on her arms, hip bruising, and he began dragging her toward the door. Kate fought, her self-defense training from those South Boston years kicking in, but Marcus had 6 inches and 80 pounds on her. Help! Kate's scream echoed in the empty hallway. Classroom doors remained closed. Teachers deaf by choice or fear. Marcus laughed, the sound hollow and mean. Nobody helps here. Nobody sees anything. That's how it works. He dragged her down the hall, Kate's heels scraping uselessly against worn linoleum. She glimpsed faces in door windows, students watching in horror, teachers turning away. Only one face showed something different. Samantha Chen in the adjacent classroom, phone raised, recording despite her terror. The destination became clear: the old equipment storage area. A row of tall metal lockers used for overflow supplies. One stood open, hastily emptied. A metal coffin waiting. Kate's resistance intensified, but Marcus was beyond reason now, operating on rage and the intoxication of unchecked power. "You'll stay here until you learn respect," he grunted, forcing her toward the locker. "Maybe a few hours in the dark will teach you to mind your own business." Kate made a final desperate grab for the doorframe, her smartwatch catching on the metal edge. The impact triggered something, the emergency SOS feature she'd set up but never used. As Marcus shoved her into the locker, as darkness closed around her, three things happened simultaneously. Her Apple Watch sent an automated emergency alert to 911 with her GPS location. The pressure sensor detected the confined space and elevated heart rate, triggering a medical emergency protocol. And the school's new silent alarm system, installed just that summer after the last teacher's incident, registered an unauthorized access to the storage area. After Kate's ID badge was forcibly removed, Marcus slammed the locker door, the padlock clicking with terrible finality. Kate heard his footsteps retreating, heard him tell someone she needed a timeout. "Crazy bitch attacked me." In the darkness, Kate fought panic. The locker was coffin narrow, barely enough room to breathe. Her watch face glowed, showing the emergency signal sent. She tried to call out, but the metal muffled everything. Tried to kick, but the space was too confined. The air already felt thinner, though she knew that was psychological. What wasn't psychological was the response already mobilizing. At the Millbrook Police Department, Officer Janet Rodriguez frowned at her screen. Emergency alert from the high school. Specific location. Vital signs indicating distress. The new system implemented after Parkland didn't mess around. She keyed her radio. "All units." Possible code red at Jefferson High. Silent alarm triggered. Emergency beacon active. The response was immediate and overwhelming. In post-Columbine, post-Sandy Hook America, school emergencies triggered DEFCON-level responses. Within minutes, every available unit was racing toward Jefferson High. The county SWAT team, conducting training just 20 miles away, redirected immediately. At the school, the first sirens wailed just as Marcus was high-fiving his crew in the parking lot. "Probably a fire drill," Jake said nervously. But the approaching cavalry suggested otherwise. Principal Warner emerged from his office to find his secretary pale-faced. "Tom, we've got police on line 1, state police on line 2, and someone claiming to be FBI on line 3. They're asking about an emergency beacon from inside the building." The color drained from Warner's face as he remembered Kate's smartwatch, remembered dismissing her concerns, remembered the liability waivers he'd made teachers sign. Oh God! Outside, the first police cruisers screeched into the parking lot, officers in tactical gear deployed with military precision. A helicopter appeared on the horizon. Parents' phones began buzzing with automated alerts. Jefferson High lockdown. This is not a drill. Marcus watched the arrival of law enforcement with the dawning realization that his father's money might not fix this. Tyler grabbed his arm. "Marcus, what did you do? Where's Miss Foster?" But the time for answers was past. The school PA system crackled to life. "Attention all students and staff. Initiate immediate lockdown procedures." This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. In her metal prison, Kate heard the muffled chaos beginning outside. Her watch showed her heart rate spiking 120, 130. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to conserve the oxygen. The emergency beacon pulsed steadily, a digital heartbeat calling for help. She didn't know that at that moment, her signal was being tracked by multiple agencies. Didn't know that Samantha Chen's video was already uploading to the cloud. Didn't know that 3 different news helicopters were redirecting to cover what looked like an active shooter situation. All Kate knew was the darkness, the suffocating metal walls, and the determination that Marcus Sullivan had finally pushed the wrong person too far, because Kate Foster wasn't just another teacher to be terrorized into submission. She was the one who would finally make them all pay attention. The locker door rattled. Someone trying the lock. Kate's pulse spiked higher. Was it Marcus returning? School security? She tried to call out, but her throat was raw from screaming. The watch on her wrist showed 47 minutes had elapsed since the emergency signal, 47 minutes that were about to change everything. Because outside that storage room, outside Jefferson High, the full weight of American law enforcement was about to come crashing down on a system that had protected bullies for far too long, and Marcus Sullivan was about to learn that some mistakes can't be fixed with daddy's money. The rattling intensified, multiple voices now, urgent and official. The darkness that had trapped Kate was about to split open, and with it, every secret Jefferson High had tried to bury. "We've got her location," someone shouted. "Storage area. Section C. Get the bolt cutters." Kate pressed her hand against the cold metal, her smartwatch glowing like a beacon of hope. Help was coming. Justice was coming. And Marcus Sullivan's reign of terror was about to end in the most spectacular way possible. The sound of metal on metal shrieked through the storage room as bolt cutters bit into the padlock. Kate's fingers pressed against the locker door from inside. Her Apple Watch, showing a heart rate of 142, the emergency beacon had been pulsing for 53 minutes now. Each second documented in the digital chain of evidence that would soon bury Jefferson High's culture of complicity. "Ma'am, step back if you can." The voice was professional, urgent. "This is Millbrook Police. We're getting you out." Kate tried to respond, but her voice came out as a croak. The locker door wrenched open, flooding her vision with harsh fluorescent light and the sight of tactical officers, paramedics, and FBI agents. She stumbled forward, legs numb from the confined space, and was immediately caught by EMT Sarah Walsh. "I've got you," Sarah said, guiding Kate to a gurney. "You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" "Catherine Foster," Kate managed, blinking in the surreal scene. The hallway looked like a crime scene from a movie yellow tape. Evidence markers, officers with body cameras documenting everything. "My students. Every student is safe." Agent Diana Morrison of the FBI interrupted, her expression professionally neutral, but eyes sympathetic. "The school is on lockdown, but we need to ask you some questions. The paramedics will check you over first." As the EMTs checked Kate's vitals and the bruises already forming on her arms, the full scope of the response became clear. Outside, 19 police cruisers surrounded the building. 3 helicopters circled overhead. 2 news. 1 police. The county SWAT team maintained perimeter positions while FBI agents processed the scene. Every major news outlet in Pennsylvania had reporters racing toward Millbrook. In the main office, Principal Thomas Warner sat in his leather chair, watching his career implode in real time on the mounted television. The breaking news banner read, "Teacher locked in storage, unit massive law enforcement response at local high school." His phone rang constantly. "Superintendent. School board members. Lovers." He didn't answer any of them. Meanwhile, in the cafeteria turned interrogation center, Marcus Sullivan discovered what real power looked like. Not the inherited influence of a small-town real estate mogul, but the crushing weight of federal authority. He sat at a lunch table, no longer the apex predator, but a cornered 18-year-old whose daddy's lawyers were stuck in traffic behind police barricades. "I want to be very clear. Mr. Sullivan," Agent Morrison's partner, Detective Ray Hutchinson, said calmly, "you're being recorded. You've been read your rights. The smartwatch data shows Miss Foster was confined for 53 minutes. Her vitals indicate severe distress. We have witness statements and video footage. This isn't a school discipline issue anymore. This is kidnapping. This is false imprisonment. This is assault. Do you understand?" Marcus's face had gone pale beneath his practiced sneer. "I want Millover." "That's your right. But while we wait, You should know that the federal prosecutor is already involved. See, when you triggered that emergency beacon, when you created what looked like a potential school shooting scenario, you brought in Homeland Security protocols. Your little prank just became a federal case. In the hallway, Tyler Brennan was having his own revelation. He sat across from Officer Rodriguez. Samantha Chen's phone between them, the video playing on loop. I tried to warn her. Tyler said, voice breaking. I've wanted to speak up for years. But Marcus, his dad owns the building my mom's store is in. Last kid who testified against Marcus, his whole family got evicted. Rodriguez took careful notes. Tell me about the other teachers? The ones before Miss Foster. The dam broke. Tyler talked about Mrs. Henderson, the chemistry teacher who'd lasted 3 months before Marcus orchestrated a chemical accident that sent her to the hospital, about Mr. Petrov, who'd tried to fail Marcus and found his car windshield smashed every week until he transferred, about Miss Lou, the one who'd fought back and ended up having a nervous breakdown that everyone knew was something darker. Across the school, similar stories poured out. Students finally felt safe to speak with federal agents taking statements and promises of protection. Jake Morrison admitted to helping Marcus access the storage area. Samantha Chen provided not just today's video but screenshots of Marcus's group chat planning the attack. Even teachers began to crack, exhausted by years of administrative cowardice. Ellen Hartley sat with Agent Morrison, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. We've been documenting things for years, she admitted, pulling out a thick folder from her bag. Those of us who've survived, dates, incidents, cover-ups. We call it the Sullivan File. We knew someday it would matter. When Kate arrived, so young and hopeful, we hoped. You hoped she'd be the one to finally break the pattern? Morrison finished gently. Ellen nodded, tears flowing freely. She was so brave, kept smiling even when they slashed her tires. When they destroyed her classroom, she refused to be another casualty, and look what it cost her. But Kate Foster wasn't feeling like a casualty. After being cleared by paramedics bruised but otherwise physically okay, she sat in the principal's conference room with a very different crowd than Warner usually entertained. FBI agents, state police investigators, the district superintendent, and 3 attorneys from the teachers' union. Miss Foster, Superintendent Angela Martinez began, her face grave. I cannot begin to apologize for what you've endured. The systematic failures here. I don't want apologies, Kate interrupted, her voice steady despite the oxygen mask. The EMTs insisted she keep nearby. I want change, real change. How many teachers before me were terrorized? How many students learned that power means immunity? This isn't about one bad kid. This is about a system that enabled him. The room fell silent. Through the window, Kate could see news vans multiplying in the parking lot like cells dividing. Her phone, returned by investigators, showed missed calls from her mother, college friends, even her old principal from Boston. The story was going national. What are you proposing? Martinez asked carefully. Kate pulled out her phone, showing the journal she'd kept. Full investigation, not just of Marcus Sullivan, but of every administrator who dismissed complaints, every incident that was covered up, every family that was threatened into silence. And I want protection for the students and teachers who speak up. Real protection, not just promises. As negotiations continued in the conference room, Marcus Sullivan was learning about consequences in the police station. His father, Richard Sullivan, had finally arrived. Not with the usual swagger, but with the haunted look of a man watching an empire crumble. The family lawyer, David Brennan, no relation to Tyler, laid out the situation in stark terms. The kidnapping charge alone carries up to 20 years, Brennan explained. Add assault, false imprisonment, creating a terrorist threat, because that's what they're calling the emergency response. And Marcus is looking at potentially 40 years. And that's before the civil suits. This is insane, Richard exploded. It was a prank. Boys being boys. That woman, Agent Morrison interrupted, entering the room. Has electronic evidence of premeditation. Your son's group chat includes messages planning to, quote, put that bitch in her place permanently. That shows intent. That makes this a conspiracy. She placed a tablet on the table. Tyler's testimony playing, then Jake's, then a dozen other students, all painting a picture of years of systematic terrorizing. Mr. Sullivan, your son didn't just lock a teacher in a closet. He created a reign of terror that we're now learning included assault, extortion, and witness intimidation. Did you know he threatened to have families evicted if they complained? Richard's face went ashen. I never. He wouldn't. He did. Using your properties as leverage, which makes you potentially liable for conspiracy to commit extortion. Morrison's smile was sharp. Amazing how federal RICO statutes can apply to small-town bullying when it involves property crimes. Back at the school. As evening approached, the lockdown was finally lifting. Parents gathered at the football field, the designated reunion point. The sight of SWAT vehicles and federal agents had turned from shocking to surreal. Social media exploded with videos, photos, and testimonies from students who'd stayed silent too long. Kate emerged from the building escorted by EMTs who insisted on the precaution, though she walked on her own power. The crowd of parents parted, some applauding for, others crying. She spotted several of her students' kids who'd attended her after-school tutoring, who'd started to believe in themselves. They looked at her with something between awe and guilt. Miss Foster, Lily Patterson, one of her AP chemistry students, broke from her parents to approach. I'm so sorry. We all saw what was happening. We should have. You're 17, Kate said gently. It wasn't your job to protect me. But now you know silence protects the wrong people. Use your voice. That's all I ask. The moment was captured by a dozen cameras, spreading across social media within minutes. Number. Justice for Kate began trending. Number. Sullivan system exposed. Followed. By nightfall, Jefferson High was the most searched term on Google. In her hotel room, the FBI had advised against returning to her apartment until Marcus's associates were all accounted for. Kate finally called her mother. I'm okay, Mom. I promise. Catherine Mary Foster. Her mother's Boston accent thickened with emotion. I saw the news. That boy. Locking you in a closet like some animal. Locker. Mom. And he's going to prison for it. Kate stared at the bruises on her arms. Purple-black reminders of Marcus's grip. All those years you taught me not to back down from bullies? It worked? Too well. Apparently. You sure you're okay? Baby? Kate considered the question. She was bruised, exhausted, and probably traumatized in ways that would need therapy to unpack. But she was also vindicated. I'm better than okay. I think we actually changed something today. The changes came faster than anyone expected. By Thursday morning, Principal Warner had submitted his resignation. By noon, 3 school board members had stepped down. The superintendent announced a federal oversight committee would investigate Jefferson High's culture and policies. The teachers' union, emboldened by Kate's stand, presented their Sullivan file officially, documenting 127 incidents over 6 years that had been ignored or covered up. Marcus Sullivan's bail hearing became a media circus. The judge, presented with evidence of flight risk and witness intimidation, set bail at $2 million. Even Richard Sullivan's deep pockets struggled with that, especially as civil lawsuits began accumulating. Families who'd been threatened, teachers who'd been driven out, students who'd been terrorists all suddenly found their voices backed by legal representation. Kate returned to Jefferson High the following Monday, against advice from practically everyone. But she had a point to make. The storage locker where she'd been imprisoned had been removed entirely, the space converted into a memorial garden for teachers who'd been forced out. Someone had planted forget-me-nots. Her classroom had been restored not by maintenance but by students who'd come in over the weekend. New posters covered the walls, including one that made Kate tear up. Courage is contagious, thank you, Miss Foster, signed by over 200 students. Welcome back, Ellen Hartley said. appearing in the doorway with coffee and a genuine smile. "Ready for this?" Kate looked at her restored classroom, at the students already filtering in early just to see her. "I've been ready my whole life." First period began with unexpected visitors. Superintendent Martinez entered with the new interim principal, Dr. Patricia Williams, a reformer known for transforming toxic school cultures. But the real surprise was the third person, Agent Morrison. "Class, Agent Morrison has something to share," Dr. Williams announced. Morrison faced the students, her expression serious but not unkind. "I want you all to understand something. What happened here wasn't just about one bad actor. It was about a system that failed to protect both students and teachers. Moving forward, there will be a direct federal hotline for reporting incidents. No more hoping adults will listen. You'll have a direct line to people who will investigate." She handed out cards with the hotline number, but more importantly, "I want you to know that speaking up isn't snitching. It's not weakness, Miss Foster proved that standing up to bullies, even when the system fails you, can create change. Be inspired by that." As the days turned to weeks, Jefferson High transformed. The new zero-tolerance policy had federal teeth. 3 more students were expelled for bullying behaviors that would have been brushed off before. The football team, stripped of players who'd been Marcus's enablers, had to rebuild almost from scratch. They lost every game that season but gained something more valuable: integrity. Tyler Brennan became an unexpected leader in the transformation, free from Marcus's influence. He started a peer mediation program. "I stood by for too long," he told the first meeting. "I let fear control me. Never again." Jake Morrison, facing his own charges as an accomplice, chose a different path. He testified fully against Marcus in exchange for community service, which he spent speaking at other schools about the danger of following toxic leaders. "I thought being Marcus's friend meant I was safe," he would tell auditoriums full of students. "But when you help a bully, you're never safe. You're just next." The trial of Marcus Sullivan became a watershed moment for school violence in America. The federal prosecutor, Alexandra Chen, no relation to Samantha, painted a devastating picture of systematic terror enabled by administrative negligence. Kate testified for 3 hours, her voice never wavering as she described the darkness of the locker, the suffocating fear, the moment she thought she might die. "But what scared me more than dying," Kate said, looking directly at Marcus, "was the thought that he'd do this to another teacher, that nothing would change. That's why I refused to quit. Someone had to make it stop." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge, citing the premeditated nature and the terroristic result of Marcus's actions, sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison. Richard Sullivan, facing his own trials for extortion and conspiracy, watched his real estate empire crumble as victims sued and won. But the real victory came in smaller moments. Kate's after-school chemistry club grew from 5 students to 50. Her AP chemistry class had the highest pass rate in the school's history. Students who'd been too scared to excel under Marcus's regime suddenly flourished. The girl who'd been too frightened to report Marcus copying off her tests got into Harvard. The boy who'd been bullied for loving science won the state science fair. A year later, on the anniversary of the locker incident, Jefferson High held its first Courage Day. Kate was the keynote speaker, addressing an auditorium packed with students, teachers, parents, and media. She wore the same blue blazer she'd worn that first day, now a symbol of persistence. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Kate told the silent crowd. "I was terrified every day. Terrified when my tires were slashed, when my classroom was destroyed, when I was dragged down that hallway. But I was more terrified of what would happen if I let fear win." She paused, seeing faces in the crowd. Tyler Brennan in his student council, President Blazer, Samantha Chen with her journalism award, Ellen Hartley finally looking proud instead of defeated. Marcus Sullivan had power because we gave it to him through our silence. Every unreported incident, every turn back, every boys will be boys. Excuse fed his belief that he was untouchable. But power built on fear is fragile. It takes just one person refusing to be afraid to bring it all down. The applause was thunderous. But Kate raised her hand for silence. I don't want your applause. I want your promise. Promise that you'll speak up. Promise that you'll stand with victims. Promise that you'll choose courage over comfort. Because every time you do, you make it easier for the next person to be brave. The ceremony ended with the unveiling of a new plaque in the main hallway. In honor of all teachers who faced intimidation with courage and all students who found their voices, silence protects the guilty. Speak your truth. Later, as Kate packed up her classroom for the day, she found a note slipped under her door, anonymous. But the handwriting looked familiar. Thank you for saving me from becoming like him, someone who almost chose wrong. She smiled, tucking the note into her journal now filled with thank you letters instead of incident reports. Her Apple Watch, the device that had literally saved her life, showed a notification, a news alert about another school adopting Jefferson High's reformed policies. The ripple effects continued spreading. That evening, Kate attended a school board meeting for the first time since the incident. The new board, elected on reform platforms, was voting on her proposal, mandatory federal background checks for administrative responses to bullying complaints. It passed unanimously. As she left the building, Dr. Williams caught up with her. You know, there's an opening for department head. Science department could use someone with your perspective. Kate considered it. A year ago, she'd just wanted to teach chemistry. Now she had a chance to shape policy to ensure no teacher faced what she had. Can I still teach my AP chemistry class? I wouldn't dare take you away from those kids. They'd probably stage a revolt. Dr. Williams smiled. A peaceful, well-organized revolt with proper documentation, thanks to your influence. Kate laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. Then yes, I'll do it. As she drove home in her new car, the insurance settlement from the trauma had been substantial. Kate passed the Sullivan Industries sign being removed from the office complex. Richard Sullivan had fled town after his conviction for conspiracy and extortion. The building would become a community center funded by the victim's settlement fund. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Saw you on the news again. Anderson Cooper called you the teacher who refused to break. Proud of you, baby. Kate smiled. But her attention was caught by another message from a number she didn't recognize. Miss Foster, I'm a teacher in Ohio. We're facing similar issues with a untouchable student. After seeing your story, I'm standing up. Thank you for showing us how this was the real victory, not just Marcus in prison or policies changed, but the courage spreading like wildfire across the country. Teachers finding their voices, students learning to speak up, administrators realizing that protecting bullies was no longer an option. 3 years later, Kate Foster would testify before Congress about the School Safety Through Accountability Act, federal legislation inspired by the Jefferson High incident. By then, pulling a Foster had entered the vernacular, meaning to stand up to institutional bullying despite personal risk. But that night, driving home through Millbrook's quiet streets, Kate was just a 26-year-old teacher who'd survived the worst day of her life and emerged stronger. The bruises had faded, the nightmares were manageable with therapy, and her students were thriving. She pulled into her apartment complex, gathering papers to grade, and tomorrow's lesson plan, normal, beautiful mundane tasks that she'd almost lost the chance to do. As she climbed the stairs, her Apple Watch, which she'd never remove, again buzzed with a reminder. Chemistry club meeting tomorrow. Theme: reactions under pressure. Kate smiled at the irony. She'd certainly learned about reactions under pressure, but more importantly, she'd learned that sometimes the most powerful chemistry happens when someone finally adds the right catalyst for change. Her story would be studied in education programs and law enforcement training for decades. The Foster Protocol would become standard training for responding to school emergency beacons. The Marcus Sullivan case would be cited in hundreds of rulings about institutional responsibility for bullying. But for Kate, the greatest measure of success came in small moments. Every student who stayed after class to talk, every colleague who felt safe reporting problems, every parent who thanked her for making their child feel protected at school. She'd come to Jefferson High to teach chemistry. She ended up teaching something far more valuable: that one person's courage could catalyze a reaction that transformed an entire community. That speaking truth to power wasn't just possible, it was necessary. That sometimes the smallest acts of defiance could topple the largest tyrannies. As she settled in to grade papers, her phone lit up with one more message. This time from Tyler Brennan, now a freshman at Penn State. Miss, giving a presentation tomorrow about ethical leadership, using your story as my main example. Thank you for showing me who I didn't want to become and who I could be instead. Acing chemistry thanks to your teaching. Kate typed back, proud of you. Tyler, remember, courage is contagious. Keep spreading it. Outside her window, Millbrook slept peacefully. Somewhere in federal prison, Marcus Sullivan was learning that actions had consequences. Somewhere in America, another teacher was facing down another bully, armed with the knowledge that they weren't alone. And in her small apartment, grading papers by lamplight, Kate Foster, the teacher who refused to break, prepared another lesson plan, because that's what teachers do. They show up, they persist, and they change lives, even when it nearly costs them their own. Especially then, the impact of Kate Foster's story rippled far beyond Millbrook. 2 months after the congressional testimony, she received an unexpected call from the White House. The president was signing the School Safety Through Accountability Act and wanted Kate present for the ceremony, standing in the Rose Garden, watching the most powerful person in America sign legislation that would protect millions of teachers and students. Kate thought about that dark locker, 53 minutes that changed everything. She touched her Apple Watch now, a symbol worn by teachers nationwide as a statement of solidarity and safety. Miss Foster, the president said during the ceremony, your bravery reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear blue blazers and carry chemistry textbooks. You transformed personal trauma into national change. The applause was overwhelming. But Kate's mind was on her students back in Millbrook. She'd arranged for the ceremony to be live-streamed to Jefferson High, where her chemistry club was watching. Their texts flooded her phone. We're so proud. You're famous. Can you get the president's autograph for our classroom? That evening, in her hotel room in Washington, Kate video called her mother. Did you see it? Mom? See it, baby? The whole neighborhood watched. Mrs. O'Brien next door is telling everyone she knew you'd be famous someday. Her mother's voice cracked. Your father would have been so proud. Standing up to bullies, just like he taught you before. Kate wiped away tears. Her father, a Boston cop who died protecting others when she was 12, had always said courage wasn't about not being scared, it was about doing right despite the fear. She'd carried those words through every terrifying day at Jefferson High, because in the end, that's what mattered. Not the headlines or the legislation or the ceremonies, but the students who felt safe to learn, the teachers who felt empowered to teach, and the bullies who learned that power built on fear was just another unstable compound waiting for the right catalyst to break it down. Kate Foster had been that catalyst, and the reaction was still spreading.